The Short Game is listener-supported on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show and join us on our Discord, head to theshortgame.net or patreon.com/theshortgame.
Welcome back to The Short Game. This is a show about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm Raygan Kelly, and I'm joined this week by two very cool co-hosts.
Lauren Ash.
Nate Heininger.
And this week, we are talking about Tux and Fanny. Tux and Fanny is I want to call it a point-and-click adventure game, but you're not really pointing and clicking in the traditional sense, so I'll just call it a traditional feeling adventure game with many weird aspects to it, from Ghost Time Games and director / I guess now game developer Albert Birney. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Apologies to Mr. Birney. What a strange game.
Yeah, I am so glad that we played this game, and this is another game that just really makes me enjoy doing this podcast, because I think on its surface, this is probably a game that I would not have. First of all, I may have never even heard of it, let alone ever actually picked it up. In general, I'm not a huge adventure game fan, point and click or otherwise, but we decided to do it for this show, and I am so glad that we did. It is.
Yeah, I have to put out a thanks to Anna Anthropy for suggesting this game. And actually, she tweeted at me sort of out of the blue saying, like, hey, have me on the show to talk about Tux and Fanny. And the way that the scheduling worked out, that just didn't happen. So apologies, Anna, for playing your suggested game without bringing you on. We'll do that another time.
Hey, but you brought us something weird and wonderful. I haven't seen a game like this since... Like, I feel like I found these in the Wild West days of the iOS, the Apple Store days, like had a lot of these weird games in it. And I feel like they went from Flash to the iTunes Store and then like flew off into the wilderness. Like I never expected to find something like this.
Yeah.
In 2022.
It reminded me definitely of the Flash game, universe, but incredibly polished and way more engaging and more fun than most of those Flash games.
No hate on Flash game developers.
Sure.
Like, there was some amazing stuff that was done there, but like, this is such a strange and interesting thing. So I've done a little bit of research, I guess, about Tux and Fanny as a property. So it takes a little bit of background might help here. A lot of this is background that I did not have when I began playing the game. So
I didn't have it all while finishing the game.
Yep.
So not really required for enjoying the game, but it may shed some light on like what sort of thing this is and where it's coming from. So Albert Birney, who is the creator of Tux and Fanny, is a filmmaker, an animator, and he's had a number of commercial or like actual feature films under his belt as a director. In fact, he has a new one coming out very soon called Strawberry Mansion, that I actually had on my like Letterboxd to watch list, the upcoming films watch list, because it has a cool concept. It's a movie about a government dream auditor coming to tax someone's dreams. Sounds like something that could coexist with the Tux and Fanny.
Yeah.
And he had a 2017 movie called Silvio, a movie about a small town gorilla that joins a local TV program, and a series of on-air mishaps threaten to shatter his identity, sending him on an adventure of self-discovery where reality and fantasy start to blend. That's the kind of thing. By the way, Silvio is in preparation for their Strawberry Mansion coming out in theaters. You can actually watch Silvio in its entirety on YouTube right now if you look that up. So that's going away once Strawberry Mansion comes out in theaters. But if you want to watch a small town gorilla join a local TV program,
yes,
that's available.
Easy, yes.
Yes, right? And Tux and Fanny began as a film project as well, but it seems like the sort of thing that was like designed to be natively online, right? So it wasn't a theatrical film. It was released first as a series of shorts on Instagram. which is where I watched most of that. If you pull up Tux and Fanny, it's Tux_and_Fanny on Instagram. There's a huge chunk of this film that is available as just Instagram shorts. But edited together, it makes up an animated feature film, Tux and Fanny. It's like an hour and a half long, and it's available on Vimeo and for free. And so it's really interesting. It has the same look as the game, and it has the same sound. It's very much coexists with the game. You could look at them and instantly tell that they are the same thing. It has this sort of pixel art style, and it feels to me as if you're sort of like accidentally found a weird old VHS of a Russian children's program animated on an 8-bit computer for television in the Soviet Union or something. It's very strange, and the longer you watch it, the more transfixing it is. It's really cool. And I've not watched it in its entirety. What I've watched is mostly the Instagram shorts, and I only realized a little too late for recording that it actually is also a feature film, and I'm gonna go watch that like as soon as we're off of recording, because I want to see more of Tux and Fanny. But that's all backstory. The Tux and Fanny video game is a prequel to the film, so it stands entirely alone. You have no need to know anything about Albert Birney or his work. You don't need to know anything about this sort of strange art film that this sort of grew out of. You don't need to know anything about the small town gorilla joining a local TV program. You just need to know that Tux and Fanny live in the forest, and they want to play soccer, but their soccer ball is deflated, and they will be going on an epic adventure to reinflate their soccer ball together as friends.
And what an adventure it is. That's really interesting about the film. I also just learned about this via Raygan learning about it right before we decided to record. So I am very excited to dig into the Tux and Fanny universe, the extended Tux and Fanny universe. I'm all in. I'm ready for more. I hope that there are more games as well. It seems like he's building a bit of a media empire here in this sort of alt comedy, strange space that I'm definitely here for. You kind of touched on it already, but with this game, like normally we talk a lot about gameplay first, and then we get to design and sound and stuff like that near the end. But I actually think for this game, it almost makes more sense to talk about how it looks a little bit more, and then we can talk about gameplay. Laura, you're good at explaining how things look.
Sure.
Please.
So Tux and Fanny are blobby stick figures. Take a stick figure, cover it in clay, and that is what Tux and Fanny look like. In different parts of the game, you see different materials they are made out of, but for most of it, they are little pixel purple and pink creatures and humanoid stick figure blobs. And the world is pixel, but it's not a very detailed pixel art. It's very thick, chonky pixels. And I'm not saying that things I played on Switch, not saying you do have some things that are like 1 pixel wide, but they are not 1 pixel wide because they are delicately and intricately drawn. If there's 1 pixel wide, it is a stick or it is a flower. You need to look at in more detail, as we might discuss later. The world is rendered very lovingly, but very simply. And the trick of the game is that you start off in a house. The central objective is, oh no, we want to play soccer. The soccer ball is deflated. You're going to spend the entire rest of the world exploring every nook of this map, looking for it. Your house, the area inside the fence. Eventually, it's an adventure game. This is not a spoiler. You get outside the fence. The world will continue enlarging. And it's a very brightly saturated world. This is not a world of sepia tones. Here's the trick, though. this game does the thing I usually hate about adventure games, which is that there's a bunch of random rewards when you do stuff that seem disconnected to nothing, and turns it into a feature in which when you stumble upon something, you never know if you're going to get a beautifully detailed pixel art, a realistic photo, a claymation thing, an actual book. There's a lot of random elements. So this game takes this simple beginning and you honestly never know what you are going to get whenever you click on something. The variety is wild.
Yeah. I mean, and that's really the game right there, is that variety, both in art style. It always comes back to this central pixel art style, but you are constantly interacting with different art styles.
Collage, mixed media, watercolors,
claymation
in a book,
puppetry. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you all got to the puppetry part, but there is almost every style of animation and just visualization is represented at some point in this game, and it's all masked in this really sort of quaint and bizarre adventure game where it's like, so their goal is to inflate your soccer ball so you can play soccer. And you pretty quickly realize that you're going to need to find all the parts to your pump in order to fill up the soccer ball with air. So standard adventure game setup. I need the pump and I need the needle. But the route that you take in order to get to that bike pump and bike needle takes you all over the place with tons of these little, pick something up here and use it over there, which normally I don't really enjoy. But something about this game, I think how quick it got you in between these things and just the absurdity of all of it. Like, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So here's what I think is what's good about that. Like, yes, I agree that if this game was divorced from its artistic sensibility and its just sort of like sense of wonder and like it does like more like little emotional notes in unexpected places than you would think. And if it was divorced from all of that, this would just be a pretty bare bones adventure game. But the adventure game stuff is a delivery mechanism for these little moments that, that's also what the Instagram shorts are amazing at, is that like they are little strange bits of animation. They're eye-catching, they're weird, there's something off-putting about them, and then it will take those moments and use them as a way to give you like a tiny drip of something like interesting or funny or emotionally honest, or like, I'm just thinking about like the moment in this game, which I think also existed in the shorts, of like the characters finally get to light their little bonfire, and you get this quiet moment of watching the flames, watching embers rising off of the flames, and Tux and Fanny. I wish I hadn't taken a note or a screenshot of the moment, but they have things to say about these little moments of like looking at nature and looking at each other that are like really good. I don't know what else to say.
But then it's juxtaposed with, you look at a flower and they say something about like the palm flower is known for its beauty, and you look at it, it's actually a blue hand. Like, it's dumb jokes like that next to moments about treasuring the power of nature.
There's a sweetness underneath everything. Like, I someday hope to have a friend as close as Tux and Fanny are to each other. It's so delightful how much they clearly love each other, and there's all these little adventure moments. We haven't really talked about the multiple character element yet, but like, I'll just say it now. You are controlling. You can control Tux or Fanny or a cat or a flea, and you can switch between them at any moment. You just click in the thumbstick, and for the most part, you're just walking around as either Tux or Fanny. It's pretty interchangeable. Doesn't really matter that much, though it does at times. But there will be certain things you get to, like this bonfire, that you cannot do until both of the characters are together. And that's usually some sort of sweet moment. There's also absurd stuff like, Laura's talked about the palm flower, or like the panda head flower, or the skull flower that grows in graveyards. But there's also like equally balanced with the sweetness, there's also like a darkness that's kind of hard to explain. But there's moments in this game that are just strange and a little uncomfortable. And some of it is for humor, like, you're constantly looking at bugs, which is great. You're also constantly looking at birds. So this is a prime bird week game, by the way. A lot of bird stuff going on in this game. But anyway, there's this one you open up, like you lift up a rock or forget where this bug is, but you look in it. It's like, oh, look at this really cool bug. It's a little facts about this bug, and then it gets real close to it, and it has a really nice like calligraphy script along the bottom. When I'm not eating, I'm screaming. And it's funny, but there's like a lot of these things that are this sort of darkness and a little like gross, but not like gross out humor, but like you are at, there's a game. I can't wait to talk about the mini games, but there's a game where you're like helping a worm get through the intestines of multiple things. And this is maybe some of the most detail of any of the art is the inside of these animals, so you're like Flappy Bird style getting a worm through the intestines of a horse, and it's kind of gross.
What I found fascinating is it's not sexual or violent in any way.
Never.
But it's very macabre, and it's a little it's got like a goth tinge next to like beautiful mythical creatures and like silliness and sunshine and rainbows, and usually those are different games. Or the like goth stuff is paired with like other darkness, and this game has no patience for that kind of darkness. It's not this is not a game really about mental health either. It's except like they have a good friendship, but other than that, it doesn't really deal with any like bad it's not a feelings game other than they have a great friendship and they feel things. But the surrealistic, like macabre is the word I keep coming back to, just because it's got that dark. It's kind of like an Edward Gorey book.
Yeah.
Like, well, there's not like you might see a dead body, but you're not going to see a blade go into anyone's shoulder.
There is no overarching, at least I don't think, there is no overarching theme or story that ties all this together that makes you think like, oh, this game is trying to say something. It's more like we're going to convey a lot of different feelings and emotions in a million different ways, and it's kind of up to you to experience it how you want. Macabre's a good word because there's also like, talking about this darkness, there's like just a severed leg in one area, and it's like, well, how did that get there? And the quote is something like, I wonder where the rest of the deer is. And it's like, but it's like kind of bloody.
It was something like when it was attached to the deer, it ran elegantly through the forest, and now it's lying here.
Yeah, I wonder where the rest of the deer is. And
well, this makes it feel like a pure adventure game in that you're actually exploring a lot of different stuff, and you're not exploring one story. Like, you are truly exploring a vast world. I mean, Nate and I both beat the game, and there's still like 100 points left in the point count.
Yeah, let's talk about that really quick. The point count. I actually really like the point counter. Everything that you do will award you some degree of points.
Always one. No, everything is 1 point.
Yeah, they'll string them together sometimes, but it is always 1 point. You can get them in chunks, but yes, every individual, it goes up one at a time, and I really like that. Like, because there's so much of this game.
It feels very antique in that, like, I've played a lot of like the old school adventure games that did have these like score systems, right? Even if you play things like the old Infocom games, for example, they always have a score at the end, and they, and it depends on how many secrets you found and whatnot. And it's kind of cool that this has that. It's kind of weird to see in a modern game, but it's also like telling you like there are a ton of secrets in this game. There are perhaps as many as 452 secrets in this game for you to discover. And, at any given time you can see, well, I have found 150 out of 452 things in this game for me to find. really strange. And it's also got like it's got a really interesting UI. Like you can pull up a kind of a different tracking screen at any time that lets you see things like how many birds have you seen, how many clouds have you seen, how many cat clues have you found, and like track things that way. That all sounds a little like, wow, here we are talking about what a great game this is because it has potentially hundreds of collectibles. This isn't really an experience like that. It's more just that like this is a game so full of a massive amount of little surprises that the game wants to. I don't think it's giving you this interface because it expects everyone to sit down and get obsessive about finding every bird. I think it's more there to like express to you that like, yes, this is a game full of wild stuff and encouraging you to turn over everything.
Yeah, and that there's a lot of birds and there's a lot of bugs and there's a lot of everything. So keep looking. Some of them are easy to find and some of them are more rare. And it doesn't really matter, but every bird you find, you get a nice little bird animation and a funny little thing about birds. And it was fun, it's
its own reward.
Yeah, honestly,
it was nice. I was like, hell yeah, new bird.
If collectibles had this good of a text in every game, I would be more excited about collectibles.
Absolutely.
But it's often an interruption to the game to like you get a collectible and you have to go to an inventory screen and then read the one sentence paragraph. Like this one fits in the game, you move on.
Well, and the bird one too, I really like too because it's like. So what this game is in screens. You enter one and then you move into the next screen, like a lot of old video games. And when you enter into a screen, it's an audio clue whether there's a bird in there or not, and you'll hear like the different sounds of the birds, and then you have to pull out your binoculars and look at them. And I just like that there's this like. Again, it's sort of like a mixed media way of dealing with collectibles. It's not like, oh, there's this tiny little, statue that I had to climb a mountain to get to. It's like, no, I was looking for something else. I heard an interesting bird sound and got to look at a cool bird. Like that was more fun. I'm not looking for them. I'm experiencing them as I'm exploring the world. And I think that's what I like. I've not really run into a game like this that I've had this similar experience where it was kind of fun just to wander around. There's Laura mentioned a thing that both Raygan and I ran into. This game is nearly flawless in its execution, but there's something that Raygan and I both ran into where you have to find a particular flower. It's very small and it's random whether you find the right one, and neither of us.
And visually on screen,
and it's semi-transparent blue on green.
Yeah, so we both, struggled to find it, and
I just thought it was texture, right? I'd seen it. I'd probabd walked over dozens of them over the course of the game, and I just assumed it was background texture.
Yeah, and I never even saw them until I was told that I need to go look for them. And
I don't think it's a spoiler to say there's a moment where you're asked to find a 4-leaf clover, and there are clovers throughout the game, but they do not draw attention to themselves.
Yeah.
And you have to find specifically a 4-leaf clover. The clovers appear randomly, and almost all of them are 3-leaf clovers, as in life.
Right.
So yeah,
the logic. Once you beat the game, you can look strategy guide. The logic behind when you get your 4-leaf clover is fair, but you have to know clovers exist.
Yeah, neither of us has.
That's the problem.
Yeah. So anyway, I had to go and find this clover, and it really is just like. They randomly show up in the screen. So your best way to find them is just keep walking around. And I was like, well, I know I need to find this thing, and I know that it's random, and I could I don't know if this would work or not, but I thought I could min-max this thing and just go left and right at the edge of a screen until it generates in there and whatnot, and just get to it. But instead I was like, well, I'm going to do what I think this game wants me to do, which is just wander around until I find that thing. And while just wandering around, I found so many other things that I would not have found if it wasn't even for this mix up with the clover. I ended up fighting a blue demon in a desert temple. I found a suit.
Oh, you found that accidentally?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the reward for finishing the scavenger hunt. Is figure out how to get there.
Well, hold on.
You just found it randomly.
No. Let me
awesome.
Let me be clear.
Okay.
So it was while I was wandering around that I found those scavenger hunt thing that led me to that. But I would not.
Okay.
I was not participating in the scavenger hunt before. But until I was like, yeah, I'm going to wander around. I found how to get inside of a statue. There's all this random stuff that ultimately is not for the main quest, if you call it that, but like it was some of the most fun I've had in this game. And it also made me very thankful to myself for having started this game early in our sort of review cycle, if you will, because I think this game really wants you to go at it at a leisurely exploratory pace. And if you're just trying to like mainline the goal, the quest, if you will, I don't think that's gonna be what is the fun way to play this game.
So speaking to that in terms of time, like we took a little bit of a gamble on this game because I was pretty sure it was a short game, based on Anna's recommendation and just sort of general vibe. But the game had only a single playthrough logged on how long to beat, and it was listed as 20 hours. And I do believe that if somebody wanted to find literally everything in this game, and especially if they were making lighter use of the hint button than I was, then it could take you 20 hours. But I don't know about how long you guys both completed the game. I think, probably a handful of minutes away from completing the game, if I am estimating right. And I'm at about 5.5 or 6 hours on my play clock. I don't know what you guys ended up at.
Well, I spent over an hour beating this stupid fire platformer that I really enjoyed for no reason. And then I also spent another
that's an element. I didn't spend quite as much time playing the computer. We need to talk about the computer games and the bookshelf.
I want to talk about those next, but I sank some time into some of the extracurricular activities in this game. So I think I'm at like 8 or 9 hours, but I'm at when I finished the main story, I was at 340 out of 452 points. And I think I know like a whole bunch of stuff that I could still go and do. So, and I have all the pieces for it. So I'm pretty sure I could get into the 400s pretty quickly based off of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'm at 389, and I'd say at about 7 hours. But those are 2 like plane rides, so that's kind of like a different way of playing, where you're just kind of running around. And I think if I cared about like advancing the plot, like if I actually had that I need to escape the room mentality in this game, I think I would have been miserable. But because I was on a plane and I needed this, like I just didn't want the battery to die. I was like happy to wander around. And although I'll say, a thing this does respect your time, you use a thing, you're pretty sure you're done with it.
Yes.
You beat a computer game, you don't have to keep completing it. You finish, like you use a tool, you're pretty sure you don't need that tool again. Like, I appreciate that.
Yes, it'll often remove it from your inventory, which is nice because there is a lot of, this felt very old school adventure gaming to me, where you go up to a thing and you're like, okay, I know that I need to interact with this thing in some way. I've got a whole bunch of items in my inventory. One of them has got to be the right thing to interact with this. And this game is absurd enough that it's not always going to be any sort of direct logical thing where you're like, it often is relatively logical, but not always. So it incentivizes you to walk up and be like, well, I'm going to try to use this hot pepper on this frog. Nope. No, that didn't work. Okay. And I'm
99% of the time it's a logical thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the stuff that you expect. It's like give honey to bear to distract it, that kind of thing. Yeah.
But sometimes it's a funny thing.
Yeah. It's often a logical thing, but it's not just enough to, at least for me, to make me think like, all right, there's a lizard.
Did you figure out where to use that hot pepper?
I did, and I don't want to.
And that was very random.
Yep, and so that's one that's in my top of mind when I talk about the absurdity of this game. We won't spoil it, but the hot pepper is used in a very strange way.
I haven't tried that yet, so thank you. Looking forward to that.
So I do want to talk about, and you just mentioned it. There's two things I think we have to talk about. One is the video games, and then two, and really just the computer in general, and then two, the hint system. I think we should come back around on because, like for me, this I think is what moved this game into just pure enjoyment. Because I've said a couple times I don't really like adventure games like this, but this game has a really simple and fun hint system that also doesn't make you feel like you're just like cheating over and over or like looking up a strategy guide over and over and over. Basically you can press in at least on Switch, you can press in the right joystick, and whatever character you are controlling will essentially have like a thought bubble about what they think they should do next. And sometimes it's pretty specific, but it's usually more like, I really need to use the bathroom. And
that was exactly what I was thinking of too. It was like, at some point you hit the button and it's just thinking they need to pee.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what happens if I go try to pee?
Yeah, see, I didn't use it until it got to the very unspecific in-game one.
Yeah.
Which is like, wonder what's going on here.
The last one is not helpful at all. And that's, by design, I think. But there's all the way up.
There's a bookshelf.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah. I gotta talk about the bookshelf because it's one of the most like loving, generous inclusions in a video game that I've ever seen.
It's great.
In their little cottage, they've got a downstairs where they've got all their kitchen and everything, and the computer, which we'll talk about again in a minute. And but then upstairs they've got their bookshelf, and you can walk up to the bookshelf and look at the books, and there are something like 30 books on this bookshelf, and each and every one of them is something that you can read. Some of them are game related. So there's like an instruction manual that is literally the instruction manual for the Tux Fanny video game is right there. Or like references that give you recipes. There's a sort of extremely simplistic crafting system that's mostly optional that you can use in the shed. And, if you look through the books, you'll find things like hints on secret codes or recipes for the crafting system, that kind of thing. But even those very basic things are like illustrated. They're little books with text and images, and they're fun to look at. But then if you click on more books, then there are 2 pages of more books, including, for one thing, the entire text of the novel Moby Dick is included. So if you ever wanted to read Herman Melville's epic of whale slaughter on your Nintendo Switch, you can do that via this. It's what a value. If you ever wanted to read Moby Dick on your Switch, you can do the entire book here. But all of the other books are like little books that I assume were either made for this game or maybe made by zinesters or something.
There's a
folks are.
I don't know how it's sourced, but in the credits there is a big list of like thank yous to people for book editions. Now that said, though, if you're a fan of fake names, this game is chock full of them, and I assume because it's the credits that it's actual people that they are thanking, but all over this game is books with names, video games with names, all sorts of media that is attributed to people, and it's, at least I believe, all of it is fake names, especially the video games, because there's some very funny.
Here are some of the titles of the books, just to give you a taste. We've got books with titles such as Dinner with Your Ghost, Letters to Baby Animals, A Little Green Goblin Burrowed Under My Skin, Animal Problems, which is a personal favorite. Animal Problems is just a series of pictures of animals with problems and a description of their problems, such as this bear is lost, should have brought a map, or this fish can't pay the bills, it will probably have to declare bankruptcy, that kind of thing. It's wonderful. And these things are the sort of thing that, like, if you went to like a, when I was reading through these, and I didn't read all of them, there's a lot. It made me think about like a little while ago, Shane dragged me to like Houston's Zine Fest, which is like a little, like basically like zine art, like swap meet kind of thing, where people who make various different kinds of specifically like zines and art books and things like that all kind of show up together to swap them and sell them and show off their work. And literally everything here is the kind of thing that I would pay like $5 for a little copy of at a zine fest or something. Yeah. They're all great. They're all like illustrated in very quirky ways. And I do think probably by a bunch of different people. I think they probably contacted all their artist buddies and said, you want to make something cool?
And there are bonuses for the games in there too.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of game that rewards you for looking at something for fun, and then there's a secret. Not the kind of game you should look through everything for a secret and not enjoy the book. Like, that's the vibe it's going for.
The lusty Argonian maid has nothing on books in Tux and Fanny.
It's another, exactly, Laura, what you were just saying. Like, this game wants you to just explore and giggle. And if you're trying to play this with any sort of like, I'm going to go through this bookshelf and find all the secrets and find all the new items from it, then I think you're missing the point. You should really just be reading the book and laughing, because they are, almost all of them, if not funny, they're just absurd and interesting to look at. And there's a lot of interesting art in them. This was another thing that I spent, a bunch of time in, that normally in a game I'd feel some sort of pressure, like, well, I don't really like collectibles. I don't really like reading. I'm not a person who, plays a game and sifts through all the lore books that are in these games and, like all the stuff that you can just find in drawers and whatnot. I'm not really into it very often, but in this game I was like, like, this is hilarious or strange or whatever.
I mean, this game is very much like having a smorgasbord in front of you. You can have a lot of little things. It's not going to be trying to feed you like 18 meals at once. I think what I really enjoy is I don't get to play games with this kind of attention to collectibles, all of these books, all of these games, which we'll go into in a second, because often those are individually hour-long time sinks, and the game is 60 hours. So I never get to play stuff with this kind of attention to collectibles, because it's either too short to include it, or such light additions, it's not integral, or it's like it's super integral to the world and it's Spider-Man and I'm never going to finish it. So it felt really significant to me that I was enjoying the collectibles and the mini games as much as I was, because I don't like, that might be normal for people who play 60-hour games all the time, but I don't. Yeah. So I loved it.
By the way, just before we go off of the topic of the books, I had a thought while I was going through the bookshelf that I'm dying to know. So I don't know what the process is for Nintendo okaying content on their store. Like, I know that they, obviously the ESRB has human beings that review the content of games. And I think Nintendo has some level of that they do themselves. I'm not really sure. But while I was going through the books in this, I just could not stop cackling at the idea that someone at Nintendo had to sit down and read the entirety of Moby Dick to make sure that it was okay.
There's no way they did.
They probably had to go through, or they had to flip through every page to make there wasn't like a dick pic in it.
Yeah,
just got to flip through it to make sure that nobody had edited extra like F words into Moby Dick or something.
Maybe. I hope so.
I hope they buried something really vile in chapter 83 of Moby Dick or something.
That's so funny.
I don't know, man.
I feel bad for that person who is reading Moby Dick on their Switch. There is someone out there. There's someone doing it.
Oh, sure, sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm not playing this on Switch. I'm playing this on PC, and obviously there's lots of ways to read. But I was surprised to see that it saved my place. I flipped forward to about chapter 8 in Moby Dick, closed it, came back days later, and hey, it saved my spot in Moby Dick.
There you
so
go.
There's that.
It'd be impossible if it didn't. They clearly, so knowing that it saved your spot, they were like, well, if we're going to do this, we need to make it at least usable, So that's very funny.
Got to make sure somebody can read Moby Dick on their Switch.
You mentioned the Spider-Man games, which I love, and it's another game that it's maybe the only other game that I've gone like 4 collectibles in, and the reason I like them in that game is because that game mechanically is just so fun, and the collectibles usually just have you do the mechanics more, and so that is fun. And this game is kind of like the inverse, where there is no real mechanics. Just what you get, the thing that you collect is like a joke or a goofy experience. But on that, I think I want to talk about the video games that you find throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
So in a number of ways, you encounter floppy disks, sometimes through achieving things. Sometimes they are just laying on the ground, or they're triggered by some sort of world event. And the game is usually some extension of something you just did. Like there's, we've talked a lot about birds and we've talked a lot about bugs, but there's also clouds. And there are these patches of grass that are like a little, they animate, the drawing makes you think they're like, it's a little bit more lush grass. And anytime you see it, you can lay in the grass and look at a cool cloud. And the clouds are like, this cloud looks like a computer, or this cloud looks like a turtle. And it's just like a full-on computer turtle in the sky. But anyway, in one of those, you get a game called Cool Cloud, where after you look at enough clouds, you get a video game called Cool Cloud, which you can go and play. And it's an incredibly simple game that just has you controlling a cloud and either going to drop rain or wind onto different things that need rain or wind. So like a building is on fire and you just go and rain. And you just
there's sound effects for every pixel you move over.
And you just drop rain on it. And most of the games are not any actual challenge. They're just silly and quick. Cool Cloud, you will be in like 3 minutes and you get a button when it's done. One of my favorite games is
and a storm.
Yeah. That actually, so Cool Cloud is a particular one because it actually has like ramifications for the game, but most of them don't. There's one that's called Reliable Robot, which was
the hardest video game in the universe.
Yeah, which was one of my favorite ones. You control a massive robot that it says like, Jeffrey needs.
I'm realizing I don't think I got nearly as many of the games as you did. I don't think I got Reliable Robot.
So
you get it towards the end.
You have to buy it.
Oh, okay,
you have to buy it from.
You have to buy it by doing all your stuff.
So Reliable Robot will say, Jeffrey needs help with his taxes, and then what you do is just step on Jeffrey and kill him, and then it'll be like.
I mean, you've got those kind of dangly legs you get, where like you move the legs one at a time and your body doesn't quite follow, and all you can do is try to walk with each joystick moving one leg, and you're going to knock a building over and crush all these people.
It'll be like
because they're tiny.
Sarah is struggling with depression. Can you help her? And then you just step on Sarah or knock a building onto Sarah. And there's like, it counts every time you help someone. And I got into the 50s before I was like, all right, I've helped enough people. But it's like
after 10, it says people say you're great, but they really don't need your help anymore. But humans always need more help.
Humans always need more help, and you just keep helping them by just crushing them. And like the list of the problems that they're having, like I got into the 50s, and I think there were a couple repeats, but not many, and it was all just like. Craig is running for office. Help him win, and then you're just.
But then the names also get increasingly weird.
Yeah.
It's like Susan, but it's spelled like SOZON.
Yeah, it's
N.
So a lot of the games are that. There's also, there are some like good little micro games in there. There's a like a tractor game that was like a little puzzle style game where. It's on a grid and you have a certain amount of moves and you have to have the tractor cover enough ground and there's obstacles, and it wasn't extremely challenging, but it was still sort of like a puzzle that you had to solve. Or there was a little platformer that had, I thought, a relatively interesting mechanic, which is that it's like called Fire Guy or Pyro Pal.
Fire Family.
Fire Family.
Fire Family.
Yeah, and
Save Baby Fire.
Yeah. And so like the mechanic is that everything you as the fire sprite touches catches on fire, and that basically is a countdown that part of the platform is going to burn and disappear. So you can't go backwards at all. Everything you touch is going away. And they complicate that by adding all these different elements that make it where you have to move fast or like try to retrace your steps, but you've already burnt away most of your steps. So it's a good little mechanic, not one that's going to sustain an entire platforming game, but they do. There's 15 levels of it that get increasingly difficult. And the last several levels I thought were really challenging. And I love a platformer. So I was like, I'm going to beat this stupid little game. And I spent way too long, playing it, but I got a little button in a point. So it was worth it, I guess, but it was fun, and I enjoyed it. And so there's, I don't know, probably 20 something of these little games that are available.
Yeah. The variety is what's really impressive. About it. Not all of them are bangers. There's a game that's like, you're a car with arms and legs and have to, catch bird poop? It's not exactly.
Avoid.
However, that's it.
Play Agile Auto, because I didn't play that until after I beat the game, and I'll just say, it speeds up the game quite a bit if you know after it unlocks some stuff. So, like, just pro tip.
I guess I didn't play long enough.
Yeah.
Dang.
You beat the high score.
I liked the ant
and then
game.
Thank me later.
Yeah. The ant one was. So I didn't get to some of the ones you were describing. I loved the ant game. It's a little slow, but you're kind of it's like this top down view of a very large sort of picnic scene. And you play as a huge swarm of ants that gets bigger and bigger as you find more ants and collect more food. And it's the kind of thing where, like, I could see that being a really good game if the mechanics were a little more fleshed out or something,
right?
In multiple levels. But like, I had fun just swarming a bunch of ants and watch it. The swarming tech or whatever was pretty solid.
Yeah,
I thought it was great.
Well, and that it was. I really enjoyed that one. And so I tried to take the stance in this game that whenever I would find a game, I would play it and I would try to beat it. I didn't beat all of them. I did not get the high score on the Avoid the Bird Poop game, but I know what you're talking about.
I didn't either.
I know what you're talking about.
Until I went back and read the strategy guide. In the first page, it says, like, before you want to read actual hints, like, did you play all of
it tells you what
Cool
games.
Cloud.
Yeah.
It's like please play Cool Cloud and please play Agile Auto.
Right.
And then it's like, go read the rest if you want. But like, that's their non-spoiler tip, which is why I don't feel bad telling folks now, like, there's no hints on the internet for this game, so like, you're welcome.
Not at this
there's
point.
Your only
which is why it's nice that the game does include a strategy guide, but it doesn't let you read the strategy guide until you've completed the game, at least to some degree. So I think the strategy guide is mostly there to help folks who want to be more completionist after they've done the basics,
which is nice.
But again, the hint system in this is like really solid. There's probably going to be a couple places where you get stuck, like Nate and I did with the Clover. But more or less, this game really wants you to succeed, unlike a lot of the older adventure games that it is imitating / parodying. So
there was a
it's in your quarter.
There was a game in there that I did not beat, but I enjoyed. But it mostly reminded me, like, there's all these little references, I think, to old games. We've already talked about a number of them, but one of them, maybe. I could have just looked this up, but maybe either of you will remember this game. I think it was an old Windows game that basically, like, you're going through a maze that is
like the 3D maze.
Yeah, the 3D maze game.
On whatever version of Windows also had the Weezer video on it.
Yes.
It's that version of Windows had that maze game on it.
That's so funny, Laura. That I remember going to a computer store in like 1995 or whatever with my dad to get a new PC, and they had the one that was playing Buddy Holly by Weezer, and it was the most amazing thing that I had ever seen. I could not believe that a computer could play a music video like that. But anyway,
I can't believe it shipped with a copy of it.
That is
great.
Well, it was, this was definitely a display.
The magic of CD-ROM technology.
So that maze game that I feel like most people who've been into computers of our age and above interacted with that game at some point, like the pinball game and like Ski Free, all these like classic games. But I never see that maze game in anything anymore. And there's a game in here that it doesn't have the same mechanic. Instead, you're carrying around a bat and you're breaking priceless vases and fighting off like a weird puppet named Herbert. But it is.
I did not play this one yet.
It is, but it's like it looks exactly like it. You know, it's the like.
Although Ski Free does show up, I don't know if you guys found.
No, I didn't get to Ski Free.
Wow.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's so many mini games in this game. It's astonishing how many there
That's
are.
the thing, because I'm at like 389. I'm pretty sure I could keep going, especially with the hints, and like probably wouldn't be more than 10 or 12.
Yeah.
So like I still think even if I completed it, it would still be in the short game boundaries.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, this game has a because of all these mini games, you know, there is sort of like a WarioWare vibe to this game too, where you're just like constantly doing little micro things that you're never gonna do again. You know, and even like we're talking about the computer games, but there's a lot of just like tiny little animations that you have to control that almost act as like little cut scenes. You know, if you're you know, there's a part where you have to like cut down a tree, and it doesn't just cut down the tree. The screen changes to where it's like a zoom in and you're holding the axe and you have to move the axe over to the tree and hit a number of times, like, you know, thunk, 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 and cut down the tree. And it expands on that a lot to where you're constantly doing these little tiny maneuvers with their hands or whatever to accomplish your goal. And it adds, again, another level of this like little bit of variety. It's just constantly changing. There's something different, and they're all either really fun or so quick that it doesn't really matter whether it was fun. It was something different.
I mean, hell, you walk by a log and you can just pet it for a while, and then it doesn't seem to do anything, and then you just leave. Like, I think that's...
Yeah.
Feels fuzzy.
Did you pet the bunny?
Feels fuzzy.
I did not get to pet the bunny. You can find a rabbit hole, and it says like, "There's a rabbit. Probably a rabbit lives here.
Yeah.
I hope I can pet it one day." And I was like, "When will I pet the bunny?" And I never found the bunny.
It was very satisfying to pet the bunny, and I was wondering if, you know, sometimes you're like, "Oh, I wonder what I'm going to get," and then sometimes it was just like, the experience was what you got, and and it's nice though. It's nice.
Yeah, I know I did find a couple like secrets I don't even want to spoil for you guys, because I feel like I'm gonna. This also feels like a good wandering game. I mean, I wander around Breath of the Wild sometimes, but it also feels very like mission driven. Like I'm going to go on a hunting. There's no grinding in this game.
No.
Yeah,
no, just sort of chill exploration with occasional undertones of morbidity.
What a great game!
It's a hang.
It is a hang. I don't know if there's much else we can say about it. I think we kind of got it, but I want to briefly recap this game. Tux Fanny is available on Nintendo Switch and also on itch.io. If you're a PC player, it is not on Steam at this point. I'm not sure if they have plans for other storefronts, but they have brought it so far exclusively to itch.io, which is the first time I've seen that pairing of Switch and itch, and thumbs up from me. And it's $10 on both platforms. It plays great either way. If you're on PC, you get the choice of playing with mouse and keyboard or gamepad, and the game plays perfectly fine either way. We didn't really mention this, but it has a really kind of unusual UI where the game is like the film and like the Instagram shorts. It's presented in a 1:1 ratio square in the center of your screen. And that gives it a bunch of space on the sides to show you a guide to the controls at all times. So you'll never forget what the button is to bring up the list of all of the record albums you've collected to choose your soundtrack, for example, or to jump into your list of how many clouds you've seen, because the button will be right there for you. But also, it's not point and click. It is designed for you to play it like either on a gamepad or with like an arrow keys kind of setup, which is a little bit not what I was expecting. So it plays great on a gamepad. I played a significant amount of this on a gamepad. If you're on a Switch, probably a great platform for it. Mentioned the price, $10. I think it's very well worth the $10. This is a really weird and interesting thing. And when you think about it, play the game for $10, and you've also got a free ticket to watch the entire sequel film, Tux Fanny, on Vimeo. as well. I'll try to have a link in the show notes to the feature film version. They share a lot of bits in common, but they are different. So you'll notice there'll be bits in the game that have a sort of an echo or sort of similar moment in the film, but the film has a bunch of stuff that's not in the game and vice versa as well. There's no boss fights in the film as far as I know.
I suggested on the Discord that we watch it and do an episode for the Patreon about this movie, and now I'm saying it to hold ourselves accountable because I want to watch this, and I think we should watch it and talk about it.
Have a chat about the movie. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I want to watch. What was it called? Silvio, about the small town gorilla.
I do too.
So I might be putting that up on my.
We didn't even mention
TV
the fact
tonight.
that they seem to speak Russian, or
we didn't talk about the weird voices. My God,
what is this?
The voices are so it is Russian.
It is Russian.
In the film, it's just straight up Russian. I think in the game, it's doing. I don't speak enough. I don't even know what Russian sounds like well enough to know
but
whether
actual Russian. But it's all that kind of sing-songing. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, just wanted to mention that before we finish.
It is voice acted.
It's voice acted, but in
even
weird
the film
Russian.
has a weird sound to it that sounds a bit like an auto-generated voice. Although I believe it is actually voice acted. I'm honestly not sure with the game whether those are humans or a computer talking. The voice is so strange.
At times, it sounds like a voice in reverse.
Yeah,
It's got that weird Red Room David Lynch stuff to it.
Yeah, so like the film really sounds a lot more just like straight Russian with a weird affect. I think they're doing something more computery here, like reversed, or I don't even know. It's hard to say. Sounds Russianish. That's part of why I thought like the film has that vibe of like a weird Eastern Bloc cartoon. Have you guys ever seen those? Like sometimes people will post on Reddit and stuff like, here's a weird children's cartoon from the Soviet Union. And they all have this like bizarre, like lo-fi, low budget, like they feel like they're from another planet kind of vibe to them. Children's television from the Soviet Union was extraordinarily strange.
No, I've not seen any of that, but
I'll try and find I can't think of any specific examples at the moment, but like this has that vibe to me. And it's not just the fact that it's the language, it's also just sort of like the like low rent animation combined with like something slightly off about it. It's really, anyway, doesn't matter, but yeah, weird voices. Thank you, Laura, for reminding us to talk about the weird voices. Anything else to say about Tux Fanny?
I feel like we could just keep doing that. Like, oh, what about, and then we could just keep going. But no, I think, if you're still listening, you have to have some degree of interest in this game. I think we're giving this a full-throated recommendation. Even like myself, I did not expect to like this game, so I would definitely give it a shot if it even sounds somewhat interesting to you.
Totally. So while we've got just a couple of minutes before Nate has to run to a work event, let's take a second to talk about what's making us happy this week while we still got him. Nate, what's making you happy this week?
Well, Raygan, as always, a lot of things are making me happy, but right now I've got one thing on top of mind that's making me happy, and that is central heating. I'll tell you why. About 2 weeks ago, our furnace broke in the middle of the winter, and it got real cold. It got really cold in our house. And
I've never been so cold as when I lived in St. Louis. It's bad there. It's bad.
It was fortunately not a horrible part. Like right now outside, it's somewhere around 6 degrees. Fortunately, during this week, it was at night, it was in the 20s, and in the day, it was up to the 40s. But we made the decision that like we've got our cat and we've got all these like house plants and our 2 kids. Like it felt like a lot to go to like a hotel or like an Airbnb for like 4 days while our house just froze over. So we decided to hunker down. We went and bought another space heater. like basically moved all the plants, the cat, the kids, everyone into this like 2 rooms of our house. Covered the window or the doors with like towels and stuff. And fortunately, we did send our older daughter to go stay with her grandma for a couple days. But we basically just huddled together and braved through the winter while we waited for our HVAC person to come and replace our furnace, which is never something that you are planning for or hoping for. So it was quite the experience. Molly did a great job of kind of getting all the stuff together for us to be able to manage. And then we got it replaced. And I don't think I've ever been happier than feeling that warm air coming through the vents after a great team of people came and spent 12 hours at our house fixing it. Or replacing, had to get a new furnace. And it was great. So modern technology and heating, that's what's making me happy. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. I'm glad you're warm, Nate, and I'm glad your cats and houseplants made it.
Everyone made it.
Mine's a little bit more trivial than that, but I was going to call out a nice gift that I got from Shane.
All right.
Shane dropped by, and we had, I guess part of what's making me happy is we had a nice little movie night. He and his kid and his wife came out to our place, and we had a nice little movie night where we had some Mexican food and sat and watched. We watched Into the Spider-Verse, which my kid has been on a weird Spider-Man kick ever since she spent a little time in the hospital, and the terrible little Spider-Man TV show on Disney Junior was on constantly. It's like Spidey and His Amazing Friends. Laura, you gasped like you were aware.
No, I gasped because I realized your little girl looks like the little girl in Spider-Verse, and I was so excited on her behalf about that.
I guess. Now that wasn't related.
I mean, she's not Japanese, but yeah.
No, but yeah, so she's she got really into Spidey and His Amazing Friends on Disney Junior, which is like a like Spider-Man dumbed down for the Paw Patrol set. And we decided that we could watch that, and it was a great time. Anyway, that's not the thing that was making me happy, although it did. It was that Shane delivered a gift to me that he had bought a while ago, and it's this thing, which I'm holding up, which isn't very good radio. It's a Tetris micro arcade. This is basically like an off-branded version of the Ardu Boy, which was like if you're familiar with that, then you already know what I'm talking about, and likely you don't, so I'll have to explain anyway. The Ardu Boy is a kind of a little open source video game handheld the size of a small stack of credit cards that's based on an Arduino. It's all open source hardware, but this is a sort of like commercial version of that just runs Tetris. So it's a tiny, like maybe the size of like 4 credit cards stacked on top of one another, little handheld that charges over USB and just plays Tetris. And it plays a pretty decent version of Tetris with a tiny little color screen and little clicky buttons that are little micro switches. And Shane and I have been competing to see, to try to beat each other's high scores on this thing. And it's actually like, I'm really surprised how decent this thing is. Apparently it's like $15 or less on Amazon or whatever. If you want a kind of a desk toy that just plays Tetris, well, I think my number 1 recommendation would be pick up an old Game Boy, but its number 2 recommendation would be this thing, the Tetris Micro Arcade, which is very inexpensive, USB powered, and it runs forever on battery on a charge. And it's just a nice, cute little way to have like Tetris always within reach. Recommend it.
Yeah, that's great. And I think I need to pick one up. I'm always fidgeting with stuff around my desk, so maybe stacking some tetronomos would be
Tetrominos, yes.
And also Raygan, Laura and I actually had already seen that when we recorded the episode without you a few weeks ago. Shane was telling us how
Shane previewed it for us.
How excited he was to give that to you. So we're getting the
that's funny.
We're getting the full.
Yes.
It was.
I didn't listen that deep.
No, it was pre-recorded.
No, this was just for us.
Okay. So I was like, I edited that episode. I don't remember mentioning it.
Well, we didn't record it because you edited the episode. And you didn't want to spoil the gift.
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Yeah. Okay. So, that's funny. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, good gift, Shane. Laura, what's making you happy?
So I also have a physical thing. It's not one I think, for once, it's not something that Raygan and Nate will want to turn and buy, but this will benefit somebody. I'm actually really happy because a cool college girl told me my nails looked good, and I had never have good nails. And this is specifically because I over Christmas, I started, it took me like till I was 25 to stop biting my nails. I finally stopped. And then of course, like I go home for Christmas during a pandemic and I get stressed out and I start biting them again. So I thought I should cover them. That's the only way I don't bite them. But manicures are incredibly expensive. And so I went to, like, I was influenced by somebody who was like, there's a thing you can put on top of nail polish that you can paint your non-dominant hand with. It's a big, like, pink thing. It's called the Poppy by a company called Olive and June. And you're like, is this really worth $18? It's a piece of rubber that fits exactly on top of the nail polish lid. So you can then paint like without getting nail polish all over yourself, because that's the issue, is you look like an idiot. So I actually have, like, I went to this wedding last weekend and I had done like gold tips off like opalescent things because I paint like a Lisa Frank kid. Like I'm like, I can do colors. And I put all of them on at once. And she was like, wow, that's such a cool manicure. And I was like, I did it myself. She was like, you can do French tips by yourself? And I was like, yeah, because I bought a thing
that does it.
Stick on that. Well, like a thing, like it's like painting, because now I can hold it like a claw. And I don't get it all over myself. So I will hold up my pretty nails to the camera.
Ooh, nice.
Anyway, it's dumb, but like French tips cost $10 extra on top of like a $40 manicure.
Yeah.
And I got the nail polish and the Poppy for like $20 total. So I'm feeling like the smartest person on the planet right now.
Love a deal. And we spend we spend a lot of time on this show talking about mean teens and spooky teens. You know,
and I like a nice teen.
It's nice to find a nice teen, with the world these days. So
the thing that defines mean teens from nice teens is whether they compliment.
100%. So what I'm really praising is like, yes, this is a product recommendation, but really I'm telling you, all the teenagers listening, to go compliment somebody older than you who's going to glow about it for a week afterwards.
Nice.
I completely feel that. I often talk about how I relate this to men, although I think it probably applies to just people in our age group generally. By this point is that like people don't get compliments anymore. I know I don't get compliments, certainly not from strangers, and even from the people in my life. Like, they take you for granted, so like that's why like you can be like a 35-year-old guy, not me, and just like think every week for 10 years about the one time somebody in a bar said to their friend, not even you, as you pass by on the way to the bathroom, oh, hey, look, there's that good shirt guy. I'm like, yeah, that's right. I am good shirt guy. I did have on a good shirt that day. Thank you. And I've thought about that every day for years. Like,
hey, Raygan.
Compliments are powerful.
Yes.
Hey, Raygan.
Agreed.
I really like that shirt you're wearing.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah. You look really good in your shirt too, Nate.
Thank you.
Yeah, and nice glasses.
Oh, they're new. Mm-hmm. This is going to carry me.
I thought they might be
This
new.
is going to carry me for...
This is really good radio.
You look like you got a haircut, Nate.
This is healthy.
Did you get a haircut?
No, but my hair is a mess, and, just will look different days. So, but...
All right.
This is good. This is healthy.
Laura, I loved the nails. They look great.
They're very proud
beautiful. Mm-hmm. All right. Anybody else want to jump in on this?
I was going to say, if you want to email us compliments, please.
Listeners, come to our Discord where you can provide us with compliments.
We may compliment you too.
We'll compliment.
You can find our show on the internet at www.theshortgame.net. You can find our contact form there. You'll find all of the contact options, links to everything. Link to our Patreon, patreon.com/theshortgame. The show is supported by our patrons. Every time you give us $1, it is a compliment. Thank you. We appreciate that very much. Every patron gets immediate access to our Discord, which is a community where we talk about the show, where we plan episodes, where we mostly take suggestions from our listeners for what to play. And it's a great place to ask us questions, because we're trying to implement a new question and segment on the show to augment our What's Making Us Happy segments. But we have gotten we've answered them all. So please, we need a new load of questions. Thank you for bringing them. You can also find us on Twitter @_shortgame. And you can find me on Twitter @Raygan K. That's RayGanK. Nate, where can people find you?
On Twitter @NateSTL.
And Laura, where can people find you?
At Twitter @Laura Janesh.
And listeners, thank you once again for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.